I live in New York. Please don't hold that against me. You'd be surprised how many people kind of do. And I'll say where I live, and they'll say, "Oh well, you poor thing. I feel sorry for you. I hope that's going okay for you. Why haven't you gone to Florida?" The funniest thing was when, in the last few years, when I was doing some reporting in some deep red states and traveling there and trying to arrange some interviews, some people were refusing to even talk to me because they would say, well, one, she works for media, not talking to her. Two, she's a New Yorker, definitely not talking to her. So that's my little rant about there being just an example about there being sometimes too much division, even among those of us who think we're on the same side. And I wanted to introduce that because I have an excellent interview today with someone that you don't want to miss this interview. And she's a New Yorker, Hornik from New York Citizens Audit. What they've been doing here is amazing. And not to say that it isn't amazing everywhere else across the nation, but if you think New York is a deep blue state, well, you need to think again. You need to hear what Marley and her team are doing, and this will likely inspire whatever you're doing in your state to keep the elections accurate, or maybe to get them back to some level of accuracy, because accuracy is everything. And we need to get some basic arithmetic down. And I don't care about these election denier or election integrity labels and all of that sort of thing. I just think we need some basic facts. If you vote, you want to know that your vote counts. So let's ask some questions and talk to the people asking questions, seeking answers, and finding solutions. This is the Today with Kay show, and I'm Kay Rubacek. There's a saying, don't wait to buy gold and wait. That saying is more true now than ever. Just a month ago, gold was at a multi-year low, but now it is up more than 10%, and gold isn't the only precious metal you can use to secure your assets. Just a few months ago, silver was also at a multi-year low, but it is now up more than 30%. So don't wait to buy gold and wait. Talk to someone you can trust. Go to ourgoldguy.com to schedule your free consultation with Our Gold Guy, Ira. That's ourgoldguy.com. Marley, thank you so much for joining me today. And it's actually pretty exciting because you're a fellow New Yorker. We live in the same state. I think we see a lot of similar things going on, some crazy things going on around the state. And one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk to you, because about this particular issue, which is sensitive politically, although it shouldn't be, it absolutely shouldn't be. So many states across the nation are looking at election integrity, but not that many people are talking about New York. But I think there's a lot of reasons why we should be looking at New York as an example for, well, let's get into that. What do you think people around the country need to know about New York?
Thank you, Kay. That's a great question. Why should we look at New York? If New York is so deep blue and so diehard progressive, like why even bother, opening up the rolls and going through all that labor and exercise? The New York State Board of Elections is not following the law. And it's not obvious that there are agencies in the state that have actually even authority to oversight their following of the law other than the court system. So we started with three basic principles, right? If you're going to have a fair election, the voter rolls have to be accurate. And that's not just my idea, that's the law. It's federal law and it's state law. The second principle is that the votes that are cast have to be from what's called qualified electors, which translates to eligible voters. That means that their voter registration record has to fulfill all of the critical elements under the law to be eligible, right? Every field that's important, your address, your date of birth, all these things have to be there. And then finally, if you want an election that is proven accurate and proven to have been administered with integrity, The number of votes has to equal the number of voters who voted. So, first off, in the New York State voter rolls, we have found millions of logical and procedurally inaccurate registrations. As far as number two is concerned, votes cast have to be from qualified voters, qualified electors. We discovered a minimum. Now, this is just citizens, and there's more information in the voter roll database that we don't have access to. We discovered in the 2020 general election a minimum of 740,396 votes in the New York State voter database assigned to registrants who should have been ineligible. And if they had gone to the polls, the poll worker would have told them, "I'm sorry, but you can't vote." That's 750,000 votes. And then, just to cap it off, we have in New York State a certified election. The 2020 general election was certified with 338,000 more votes cast than voters who voted.
338,000. Is that what you said?
Yes. Or, well, let's say that's a maximum, 272,000 is a minimum. So that's the range of possibilities depending on how you count it, if you count the state as a whole or if you count it county by county. To certify an election, the person who signs their name on that line, they are swearing and attesting that all of the administrative procedures of that election followed the law, that they were accurate, and that it was administered with integrity. Now, if you change the word votes into thousands of dollars, and this was your bank account, would you be okay with your bank telling you, "We don't know why, but we have $272,000 here that it says it belongs to you, but it really belongs to us." Like,
Mm.
where in business or in any other forum is that kind of inaccuracy not only tolerated but literally sworn to as accurate?
Mm.
And just one quick thing, one result, because people always want to know, well, did it materially affect any elections? We have uncovered 95 state and federal legislative races from the 2020 general election in New York State that were uncertifiable, meaning the number of votes cast by people who would have been turned away at the polls if they had actually been a real voter who had gone to the polls to vote. The poll worker would have had to say, "You can't vote. I'm so sorry. You have to go to the Board of Elections. This is irreparable. You're purged. I can't let you vote." 95 state and federal legislative representatives for New York State had more votes cast in their races from ineligible voters than the margin of victory. That means we have no idea who actually won those elections. And yet, here we are, we just crossed the 2022 midterm, and all of those people for 2 years served in good faith, supposedly, with the trust of we the people in office, signing their John Hancocks to bills, turning them into laws that govern our actions as the people of New York State. This is outrageous, and it literally is a crisis in governance. Because if those people were imposters, which there's absolutely no way, like, you could be the top elections official in New York State, and you cannot know. There's no way to know whether the person who was serving in office was the chosen candidate. And yet they're governing us and making decisions about our lives, making decisions for our children and our elders. And frankly, a lot of people are pretty upset about those decisions.
I see it all the time that people are frustrated with the governance in the state. And since you've started looking into this, you've obviously seen a lot of information that people aren't privy to because they just haven't done their due diligence, they haven't done the homework. Yet you're being called an election denier. Now, how does that, well, one, how does that make you feel as someone who's obviously put a lot of effort into this? But how do you counter that?
Oh gosh. Well, sticks and stones, as they say. I couldn't be bothered with it. And it's an opportunity to find out which people are interested in getting to the truth and which people may be interested in getting to a paycheck. So, fine. How do I counter that? I guess it depends on, what concern they're claiming is the reason. Let's say a favorite reason to target me and New York Citizens Audit as election deniers is because we bring up things like the 10,000 people in the New York State voter roll database who were supposedly born on January 1st, 1850, right? And you would be amazed because some of them are doing great. And actually, I don't remember the number offhand. I might have it here, but it's a couple hundred of them actually were doing so well they made it to the polls on November 3rd, 2020. So just to say that old school diet, that old style diet, the food right from the land, boy, was that hearty. So they're 171 anyway. So
Going
they
strong
say
and still voting.
this is a really no, that's a good question because this is the kind of just garbage they throw up to deflect people from looking deeply at a circumstance. I don't know why people who are in these positions do that. I know it's kind of normal when someone tells you you're not doing a good job to be defensive. So, for all I know, they're just being defensive on that principle. However, they're wrong when they say that being born on January 1st, 1850 is a default date that was entered into the New York State voter rolls at the time that the rolls were being converted from paper records to electronic records. And some of these voters, they did not know and they did not have an accurate birth date, so they entered a default date. So there's a couple problems with this argument that I can share with you. You can learn how to refute stupid arguments about the voter rolls. First of all, the voter rolls were made electronic, at least 20 years ago, probably earlier than that. So if you think about this logically and you realize the New York State Board of Elections is not like a private corporation, right? The citizens of New York fund the New York State Board of Elections, and they have the right in their budget to include postcards. Right. So you just take all those people who you didn't know their birth date, back in 2000 when you made the electronic database, or probably much earlier than that. I don't know. We don't know the actual date when everything was converted. Um, Supposedly, some New York State registration records from different databases, not necessarily voter, started getting converted in the 80s. So this is a long time that they had to send all those folks. They have their name, they have their address. Send them a postcard. I mean, it's getting more expensive now, but 20 years ago, gosh, a postcard was like 15 cents. No big deal. Just say, hey, we're missing a critical piece of information about you for your voter registration record. Please visit the Board of Elections to get this fixed up, right? No big deal. And in 20 years, I think you could cover 10,000 Lincoln voters, the people who got to vote for Abraham Lincoln and then they voted in the 2020 election. So that's point number one. Point number two is they're lying because a lot of the people who have default registration dates were registered to vote after the conversion of the databases to an electronic database. So there's absolutely no reason that they shouldn't have gathered that information accurately into the system in the first place if we can assume those are real valid people associated with those. There is a real valid person connected to each one of those registrations. Point C is it matters. Even if it is a default date, it matters. And the reason that in New York State you are required to have an accurate birth date as part of your voter registration record is because you're not allowed to vote until you're 18. If the voter age is falsified for any reason, whether it's ignorance or malice, if that date is not accurate and is clearly a false date, then there's no way for any person, whether it's me a citizen or, the top elections official in New York State, there's no one who knows what the real date is. And the real date is material to deciding whether or not that person is eligible to vote. It's that simple. There were 27,496 people who voted in the 2020 general election and had no address in their registration record. Now, that could have been fixed at the polls. And the New York Citizens Audit team did file FOIL requests in all 62 counties for all of the affidavit, or sometimes they're called provisional ballots, that were cast in 2020 and the reason codes for those being cast. And for example, in Steuben County, there were, let's see, in Steuben, they have 313 people registered to vote with no address. 204 of them voted in the 2020 general election. 7 of them cast a provisional ballot, updating their address and requesting permission for their vote to be counted when the Board of Elections reviewed their address information and decided whether they were going to update the record. That means 197 people from one county, just from Steuben, voted without curing this issue at the polls. So that shows you, first of all, they can cure it, and they do know how. And second of all, somehow 27,000 people managed to do it anyway.
There you go, friends. This problem is not just in your state, it's even in New York, supposedly a deep blue state, but we actually don't know how deep blue it is because of these inaccuracies. Accuracy is 1 point, eligibility, and actually just basic arithmetic. Do the voters match up with the votes? If we don't accept basic arithmetic, we may as well go back to the Stone Ages. Marley, when I travel around the country, I'm often laughed at for being a New Yorker, which is funny when I'm in some of the deep red states, and it's just that perception that people have about us, because we're in a one of these financial centers, I guess, like LA and New York, seen as such progressive blue states, and or, California, and and I find it quite funny and interesting just seeing where people have this impression of New Yorkers. But at the same time, there is a lot of people here that are equally upset about these inaccuracies here. And I think there's a lot of positive traits about the people of New York. There's positive traits about everyone everywhere. I don't have any preference. I just, happy that I'm able to live here. But what qualities are there about you and your team that are really valuable for the research that you're doing? Because you are New Yorkers, and I think you mentioned before this interview that there's some benefits to that.
Well, yeah. As they say, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere, right? So when people started coming to the New York Citizens Audit team and volunteering, what we discovered quickly was that because the lockdowns in New York were so severe, and because of the vaccine restrictions and testing restrictions being so severe, we were getting people who probably would have been making 7 figures if they could have been employed. and they were coming and saying, "We want to volunteer our time. We want to volunteer." I don't know what they thought they were getting into. I don't think I knew what I was getting into. But that's been a great benefit because we have, very savvy, experienced business people. We have extremely advanced computer programmers and database designers. We have sleuths, just people who have incredible minds, authors, journalists, media people. I mean, I'm a farmer. We just have this huge range of experiences and knowledge to draw from in evaluating the kinds of data we're looking at and figuring out how on earth do we get New York informed about what is going on here, because unfortunately it does still seem like a lot of folks in New York don't yet realize how hard we're being gaslighted about this blue state thing. I mean, I don't know what color New York is, but I know it's not stupid. Like, we
Yes,
don't
that's right.
want quarantine camps and we don't want mandatory vaccinations. You want to get a vaccine? Fine, go get a vaccine. I'm not here to tell you no. The way that we've approached the analysis is a bit unique. So, where in other states they just talk about, oh, that's phantom voters or it's this or it's that, or, it's odd that all these people are registered to vote on January 1st, but, we're not really going to go and dig on that. Um, we have created categories for querying the voter rolls because the New York State voter roll database is massive. It's over 21 million registrations, which, just by the way, speaking of arithmetic, that's more people than live in New York State, never mind are old enough to vote. We have
That's
one
such
and a
a
half.
red flag there. Isn't it, Marley? Sorry. I mean, listeners, just think about that. Just think about that. Basic arithmetic. I'm sorry. I just had to call that out. That's just
Yeah. And
you know,
something interesting about that, Kay, actually, people are inclined to give other people the benefit of the doubt. We really are, because we can be naive, we can be trusting, and we try to do a good job, and we ascribe that to others. Um, the agency that has oversight over our elections at the federal level is CISA, CISA, the Critical Infrastructure and Security Agency. So, again, let's compare it to banks or, say, airlines. Like if you're processing tickets, I mean, the mail system, people successfully operate extremely complex business structures with extreme accuracy on a daily basis. And so this is not an area where we should be giving our elected officials and our elections officials the benefit of the doubt. They don't deserve the benefit of the doubt because even our federal government identifies elections as critical infrastructure regarding national security. So it's like, okay, sure, your cup of coffee was 1 or 2 degrees off its ideal temperature. You're not going to sue. But if your election officials are certifying an election with, hundreds of thousands more votes than voters, you have a big problem. There's a big problem there. And people have a right to deny that election because it's called a confidence scheme. It's called a con game. Even if there's no intent behind it, fine, let's take away the con scheme. Let's just call it a mess. That's called dereliction of duty, which is still a criminal charge.
it really is a matter of integrity as far as I see, is that people need to be held accountable for what they say they're going to do. It's just that basic arithmetic. Okay, do things add up? If they don't, we have a problem. Let's fix it. I think the work you and your team is doing is really encouraging and inspiring. And what can people do to support your work?
So our website is auditny.com. Just simple, auditny.com. There's a form there, the volunteer form, which you can fill out if you want to get involved with New York Citizens Audit. There's a page that has some information regarding every county, relevant to the 2020 general election. So, what kinds of election issues did we uncover specific to your county from 2020? Oftentimes, the first step when someone gets onboarded is they have the opportunity to be interviewed, and by someone from the team who's been on the team for a while. And usually, the first thing they want to do is just talk for a while because they're so happy because finally you have somebody to talk to who understands your perspective. And so, coming and being part of a beautiful team of really dedicated and uplifted patriots, and we just um, keeping our focus on being a miracle and bringing the light within us and the truth we know within us into the world, and working together to accomplish that task and overcoming obstacles along the way. It's really fun. One thing I'll share about the efforts of New York Citizens Audit since, I would say, since May 9th. That was when we first started publishing some of our data really in a to officials. So we brought a petition to the New York State Board of Elections, to Attorney General James, and a couple other offices, the Secretary of State, the party heads, on May 9th, evidencing these unacceptable anomalies and calling for the decertification of that election because it was not certifiable. Um, After contacting those entities, we had a meeting regarding some of our other evidence, which is actually criminal in nature. We have direct evidence of criminal, nefarious behavior regarding the New York State voter rolls. And we brought that to the SIU unit of the state police in June. They met us with some skepticism, I will say. By the time our 4.5 hour meeting ended, they said, and these are their words, not mine, "This is treason." And they passed it over to the Foreign Intelligence Task Force of the FBI, who have yet to contact us.
June.
Because
Since
they
June.
said, yeah, because the state police said, and this is the thing I wanted to point to. The state police said, these guys are at the top of the state police. They said, we don't have jurisdiction over the Board of Elections because they're an executive branch agency. And the executive branch does not have jurisdiction over the Board of Elections because that could be a tool that, a tyrannical executive could use their authority in that area to try to strong arm the Board of Elections, or in some way influence their actions. So that I also have spoken to an inspector general for New York State, doesn't have jurisdiction over the Board of Elections. We've met with sheriffs in county after county after county, don't have jurisdiction over the Board of Elections. We've met with DAs and we've presented compelling criminal evidence to them, and they said, that's great. This is very compelling. When you tell us who did this, we'll prosecute them. So these are some of the folks that we have been meeting with.
Wow.
And basically, what it comes down to is the only people who have jurisdiction over the Board of Elections is the Board of Elections.
How convenient.
That's who we're supposed to bring our complaints and concerns to. So I want people to understand that we are the remedy. We have to become educated. We have to become connected to each other. We don't have all the answers. How is that going to happen? What's the plan? What's the strategy that really works? You know, right now there's about 2,000 people affiliated with New York Citizens Audit around the state. If we get that number to 2 million people, we won't be asking, what can you do for us? They're going to be asking, what can we do for you? Because this is our state. They want to take all these beautiful dairy farms and crop farms across New York State. They want to turn them into solar farms. Solar panels don't grow food. Nothing grows out of a solar panel. They don't want good things for New York. They just want to make their money. So we have to decide together. We have to have that beautiful we the people responsibility, the self-governance that our founders really wanted to um, imprint into us. Right? They left all these beautiful documents and all of this information. They took all of their hard earned wisdom and turned it into things, trying to help us, trying to say, don't ever give it over to big government. And it's our responsibility to say, before America is gone, we need to stand up. We need to be smart. We need to be strong. We need to work together, and we need to take this country back because it's ours. It's that simple. They just can't have it.
There you go, friends. If you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. If you can if you can handle election integrity issues in New York, you can handle it anywhere. And if we've got Marley and her team on it, I feel confident, but I think we need a lot more people on there. 2,000 isn't enough. There needs to be more people joining in, and I think that's Marley, you've given a great explanation and inspiration. I love to end the show with inspiration, and you've done it for me. Thank you so much. Friends, you've been watching the Today with Kay show. I am Kay Rubacek. What a wonderful interview and guest we had today. Please do the like, share, subscribe, and if you're listening on a podcast, click the 5-star button because the algorithm doesn't like anything except for 5. So it's 5 or nothing, and I'll never be offended if you give me nothing. I so appreciate your time listening to this very important issue. Send me an email. Let me know what you're doing in your area, and make sure you go to auditny.com and stay in touch on this issue. It affects, it's just so fundamental to everything going on around all of us right now. I will see you next week.